Hi everyone, I'm Andrea from Buenas Noticias and Easy English, the YouTube channel where you can learn new English vocabulary from a lot of different and interesting stories and also improve your listening comprehension. Do me a favor and please watch the video to the end. It really helps YouTube notice a new channel. Also, you know the drill. The drill is like the routine. You know the drill. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share with your friends who are learning English, or share with your friends who want to hear happy or interesting news stories from around the world. Okay, let's get started on today's interesting story from Africa. What's the first thing most people ask when they're meeting someone for the first time? La primera vez, the first time, especially if no one else is introducing them to each other. Normally we ask, what's your name? My name is Andrea. My name is Rosa. My name is Jaime. My name is Jennifer. My name is Tommy. What would you do if you heard the response, my name is privilege, privilegio, or my name is Lovejoy, or my name is God knows? You'd probably assume that that name wasn't the name they were given at birth, nacimiento, at birth. And maybe you'd ask, wait a minute, is that your real name? Tu nombre real? If you're from Zimbabwe, in Africa, the answer is probably yes, because names like trust, knowledge, divine, marvelous, maravilloso, hard life, surprise, sorpresa, learn more, and blessing, names like these are normal in Zimbabwe. And the names aren't random. Random is when something is just picked out for no real reason. It's just a random, no sense in why it's selected. But these names are not random. These names are intentionally chosen. Intention means purpose, como propósito. So in many African cultures, not just Zimbabwe, names carry meanings that reflect the family situation, maybe the parents' hopes, esperanzas, their faith, su fe, or something else important that happened around the time that the child was born. But in Zimbabwe, the interesting thing is that many of these names, these meanings, they are given in English. The names are in English. And there's a reason for that. That's partly because, en una parte, Zimbabwe was once a British colony, una colonia de Britannia. And today, English is still an official language that pretty much everyone uses in schools and governments, etc. Notice I said pretty much. That way of using pretty is not like pretty. It's pretty much like more or less, más o menos, pretty much. It's just a way we say more or less. So English is pretty much an official, English is an official language that pretty much almost everyone uses in schools and governments, etc. But the tradition of giving a child a meaningful name existed before colonial history. English just happened to be the natural choice in Zimbabwe, but that's because the language in Zimbabwe is English. But the idea of giving names out that means something is more of an African tradition. And I guess we also have that in many other countries, but they're known for it, to put it that way. So I got this whole story from the Associated Press, and they talk about a woman in Zimbabwe, and her name is Privilege Mubani. That's her name. She manages a bar in Harare. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Anyway, that's the capital city of Zimbabwe. And when she was a child, cuando ella era niña, she didn't think too much about her name, but when she grew older, she asked her father what it meant. ¿Qué es el significado de mi nombre? She asked her father what it meant. Her mother got pregnant, se embarazó, got pregnant. Pregnant is embarazada, out of wedlock. Out of wedlock, we use that term in English to say that she wasn't married and she didn't have a husband, so she was pregnant out of wedlock. It's kind of a polite way of saying what that situation is. And in her conservative community in Zimbabwe, getting pregnant out of wedlock is very difficult, muy difícil. And many of the people in her town, they laughed at her, se rieron de ella, they mocked her. Mocking is when you make fun of someone. It's when you are sarcastic with them and you just make terrible comments about them and make them feel less important. That's mocking someone. It's not a nice thing to mock someone, and it's definitely not a nice thing to be mocked. Anyway, because of the situation, she thought she would never find a husband. But eventually, a man decided to marry her anyway. This man ended up becoming Privilege's adopted father. At the time, though, for her mother, that moment when she met the man and he married her and he saved her from the situation of being embarrassed because, oh, notice what I said, embarrassed, not embarazada. Embarrassed is avergüenzada. So he saved her from being avergüenzada, embarrassed in the village, and she considered the whole situation to be like a precious gift, un regalo precioso. So she decided to name her daughter Privilege, Privilegio. I think that's a nice story. Now, another person that they mentioned in the story, in the Associated Press story, is about a journalist, a periodista, journalist, and his name is Lovejoy Mutongwiza. I hope I have his last name pronounced correctly, but his first name is Lovejoy. Imagine a name like that. What a beautiful name, right? I love that. I love that. Anyway, I love that, Lovejoy. His parents told him that when he was conceived, that's the moment when the mother became pregnant, the mother and the father were very, very much in love, enamorados, and very happy, alegre in their lives. And they decided to name the baby Lovejoy, love and joy. Joy es como, joy is regoso. I think that's the word for joy. I'm forgetting a little bit, but anyway, he says that Lovejoy says that the name fits him because he is very, very rarely angry. Muy poco se enojo, and he's just naturally a happy person. Una persona naturalmente alegre. So, in other words, Lovejoy feels like he's lived up to his name. To live up to something means to match it, to have a point where you're getting close and you're there and you live up to it. It's also estar a la altura. So you have a sense of what that means. So he lives up to his name because he is a loving and a joyous person. Now there's another story about a guy, his name is Shame. Shikwana is his last name. And for English speakers, the word shame and the name shame sounds negative because shame is a kind of a painful feeling of being once again avergonzado or vergüenzada or deshonrado. So it's not a happy word when we use the term shame. But for Shame, the person, he says it's not a painful name because he was named after his grandfather and it's part of his family heritage, in herencia de su familia. So he likes having the name Shame. Okay, there's another little part I'll say, that there's a soccer tournament, una competencia de fútbol in Africa, and it's called the African Cup of Nations. And Zimbabwe's team, their team nacional, equipo, got a lot of attention online because the futbolistas, they had names. Their names were teenage. And I mentioned before, God knows, divine, marvelous, knowledge, prince, prospero. Now we know Prince because we know the famous musician Prince, but that's not a normal thing in the United States. Maybe it's a little bit more popular these days with certain celebrities. I'm thinking of some names like 50 Cent and Sting, but these names don't really mean what they are, the way that these other names in Zimbabwe are the meaning of the person's essence of their personality, su esencia de su personalidad. So it's a little bit different than when people just give themselves a name like Madonna or Cher or things like that. It's because the words themselves have a lot of meaning. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting story. If you did too, do me a favor again, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends. Tell me in the comments if you know of other people who have names that have meanings or meaningful names. Maybe you have a name that has a meaning. Quizás ustedes tienen nombres o conocen gente que tienen nombres interesantes, que tienen significancias. That would be great. I would love to hear them. Put them in the comments. Again, I want to give credit for the story from an article that I read in the Associated Press website. Y a propósito, by the way, if you don't know this, the Associated Press, AP, we call it for short, they provide lots of news stories and photos and videos to many newspapers and websites and TV stations and radio stations. So it's another source of news. I always suggest to my friends and to all of you, wherever you're getting your news from, try to get your news from different resources, from different canales, not just the same place all the time, because then the news can be biased. Biased is when it's leaning to one side or the other and you're not hearing the full point of view. When you're hearing news, especially news from around the world, it's important to hear it from different perspectives, perspectiva diferentes. So this is another resource you can use, the Associated Press, to get some of your news. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this latest edition of Buenas Noticias in Easy English, and I'll see you next time. Bye!